Make sure that your pieces are centralized. Look for weak squares. And you want to have open files, especially for these rooks. Get a knight on this juicy square, doubling up the rooks. Welcome for a new video, and in this video I will show you everything about attacking principles. And I played against a titled player, so a very strong player, and check out how I did it and how I managed to convert this game. We enter a Queen's Gambit, and to be exact, the Queen's Gambit declined after knight to f6. In these kind of positions, you can take here and go for the Queen's Gambit accepted, but this is a very common line to just leave your pawns and exchange the pawns here, and then set up this pin on the knight and play for the light squares. And the light squares will be vital in this game. And I play the move e3. And I will also show you a lot of how to exploit white squares and weaknesses and outposts, so check it out. Here my opponent plays the move h6, attacking my bishop, and I retreat my bishop. You don't really want to go here, although it's a playable move, but instead you want to keep some attack going here. But now c5 is already a good move for my opponent. Instead, keep this alive, and in the end, maybe after f3, this bishop wants to go to f2 and play for e4 at some point. c6, and I play my knight here. Here my opponent plays a dubious move, attacking the knight. It's playable, but in these kind of lines I want to play f3 and e4 later on anyway. So this basically gives me a tempo, and my opponent should have retreated here to e6, but then knight to f4 is a possible way to play this, and then c5, and the game goes on. At some point I will likely trade off this light square bishop, and hopefully I will be able to get a hold on the white squares together with the queen and the bishop. It's a nice battery. But my opponent went here, and then knight f4 is a super nice tempo, attacking the bishop. You don't really want to go here, because then I can take it, and that simply wins me a pawn, and the king side is very vulnerable here. So that will be very, very beneficial, but my opponent went for the move g5. It is the best move in the position, setting up a fork. And this bishop is protected. So there's multiple ways, but I took the bishop here, and my opponent can take back the knight or could take the bishop. And best would have been to take the bishop here according to the computer, but then I simply take his knight, and after a recapture, then look at this position. These pawns are weak. The king side is not too amazing. I will simply go queen to d2, knight to d7, and here castle. And look at this position. I have a lot of pressure in the center. Maybe go e4 at some point, although my opponent has some pressure here, and will likely go c5 after rook c8 first. But you know, this pawn is already weak and attacked if I play e4, so it's something I can definitely consider. Another move is to go here and also put my rooks here, and you know, this is a very straightforward attacking play for me, and this is definitely more straightforward for me and easier to play. Instead, my opponent took the knight, and now I simply retreat the bishop because it's being attacked, and I retreated, and I got the setup I was aiming for. And maybe I will go e4 at some point. First I need to castle, connect my rooks, right? These are middle game principles. Make sure that your pieces are centralized like this. Get your queen here, castle, and connect your rooks. Very important. And here bishop to d6. Question mark, because black hasn't developed his knight yet, and it plays the bishop again. Well, this knight is already out of the game. So you move this piece now another time. Well, you should have moved this piece. Here I go g4. I was wanting to go for g4 anyway. And look at this juicy square, right? g4 attacks the knight and also gets more control over the f5 square. And maybe the queen will also go here at some point and strengthen the hold on the f5 square. So this is a very important concept in the middle game. Look for weak squares. And f5 is such a weak square. Now he goes back to f6 instead. And here h4 would already be a good move. But first I decide, because when you're attacking, you want your pieces to be centralized. These pieces are centralized. This bishop should do a bit more, but this rook is already on a good square. and I need to bring the queen in, and I need to castle, so I can also get the other rook in. So that's my very straightforward plan, and my opponent needs to think about how to get some counterplay. And I think rook to e8 is a bit slow. Maybe he should have gone for a developing move again and set up the rook behind the pawn and get something going here, because now I castle. And yeah, if you now could have played rook to c8, then maybe you already could have pushed for the c5 pawn. So here my opponent goes for b5. You should go for a counterattack. Maybe this is a move, but I had something very concrete in mind, and that is the move h4. Attacking the g-pawn of my opponent, and it's already very hard to defend this as black. I'm already much better. 2.5 is what the computer gives me here, and knight to a6 would have been an option to go for this fork. So if you're defending, look for ways to counter your opponent, look for counterplay. And my opponent went for counterplay with b4, trying to attack my knight. But where does my knight go to? There's a few squares. It can go here, and then it might end up here. But the downside is that, you know, this rook will end up here, and this pawn will get pushed anyway. But what is a better square for the knight? I was already talking about this f4 square. What if you would be able to get a knight on the f4 square? That would be super strong. So that was my thought already before this move. What if I make this knight rotation? And if I get here and it takes, well, then he loses a very strong bishop. And I get the bishop pair. Here I play knight e2 to make this maneuver. And my opponent plays the queen to a5. I have to protect this pawn, of course, because otherwise he gets the counterplay he wants. So when you're attacking, it's also very important to be mindful of the plans your opponent has. And this is not really very easy anymore, because then the queen will also take here. So he goes there anyway. Maybe I could have taken here, but we are attacking. So, and when you're attacking, you want to have open files, especially for these rooks. Get open files, and that's what I did by simply taking the pawn, and my opponent takes back here. And look at my opponent's king position. This bishop is aiming at the king position. The queen is aiming at this position. The rook is very strong already. And what if I would be able to get a knight on this juicy square? It would be the ruler of the kingdom. So that's also my plan here. And my opponent, yeah, maybe should have taken, I don't know, but then, you know, then the bishop takes back, and the bishop might prevent the king from escaping. And then, you know, doubling up the rooks is deadly at some point, especially with the bishop and the queen also attacking already. King g7 here would have been the best move, but I think this is already game over. +6 for me at this point. So my opponent played king forward. That's a big mistake, and that's what happens often. Making a blunder in a lost position, because knight to f5, a square where I was already going to, gets a fork in. But there was not a lot to be done. And here, yeah, you simply have to go back. And yeah, here, simply the bishop hangs. And this is winning for me. So, key in an attacking position, look for weak squares in your opponent's camp. Make sure to get open files for your rook, and get as many as pieces into the attack as possible, and try it out yourself during the next game, and you will for sure have a better attack than you played before. Good luck, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you soon, guys. Bye bye.